Imagine we're in a European city around the 14th century. It's walled, with narrow streets and 2- or 3-story wooden houses, many with the upper floor jutting out over the street. There's a castle or fortress at the top, an imposing church or cathedral in the center, and the market in the main square. The population is divided into estates: nobility, clergy, bourgeoisie, common people, beggars, and outcasts. The nobility includes kings, dukes, counts, marquises, barons, and knights. If you were a nobleman, you would live off the rent, renting out inherited land to peasants who would pay you with crops or money. You wouldn't pay taxes to the king, but in the event of war, the king could ask you to finance his armies or lend soldiers to his cause, and you wouldn't be able to refuse. As a nobleman, you wouldn't wake up just for the sun. You would have servants to prepare your bed, clothes, and breakfast. Your morning begins with basic hygiene: washing your face and hands, sometimes perfumed with oils, and dressing in luxurious, embroidered, and expensively colored clothes. You have the option of wearing silk, fine linen, or high-quality wool fabrics. Your breakfast is abundant compared to that of the common people: fresh bread, eggs, cheese, fruit, and sometimes a little smoked meat or fish. You accompany it with wine or light beer. Everything is served in your main hall of the residence, decorated with tapestries and fine furniture. Although it may seem like your life is all luxury and entertainment, you have important obligations. Managing your lands, you must review revenue accounts, and decide on sowing, harvesting, or taxes levied on peasants and villagers. Counsel with other nobles or the king. Depending on your rank, you may participate in meetings for political or military matters. You also undergo physical training, hunting, horseback riding, weapon handling, and training of young knights. Hunting is both entertainment and preparation for war. As a young noblewoman, you receive an education. You have teachers who teach you reading, writing, chivalry, religion, and social etiquette. If you are a noble girl, you must learn household management, embroidery, music, and social behavior. Lunch is usually a modest feast compared to dinner, but more luxurious than any peasant meal. Soups, breads, meats, poultry, fish, and fruits are served. They are eaten at the table with family and servants, sometimes with entertainment such as musicians or troubadours. In the afternoon, you may engage in sports or games, such as jousting, tournaments, hunting, or weapons training, or you may have social affairs, receiving visits from other nobles, negotiating marriages, alliances, or trade contracts. You attend Mass or pray in your private chapel. Faith is central to legitimizing your status. Along with the clergy, you have alliances and protection. They support each other to legitimize power and wealth. Dinner is the most important part of the day. A banquet awaits you, with several dishes, music, and entertainment. You value displaying wealth and power, so the food is abundant and varied. After a good meal, your family can retire to their private chambers, where they have comfortable beds, fireplaces, blankets, and personal servants. Your evening ends with reading, conversation, or preparation for the following day. Your social circle is very exclusive. It is extremely rare for someone not born a noble to associate with you, although the occasional very wealthy merchant may be ennobled by the king in exchange for loans or favors. or a commoner may be knighted for military merit. Yet even so, the hereditary nobility guards its privileges tooth and nail. The clergy, made up of bishops, priests, and monks, control festivals and education. Only they can read and write. They are also responsible for registering births, marriages, and deaths. If you would like to belong to the clergy, you must first know that their life is entirely organized around faith. From dawn to bed, everything revolves around prayer, liturgy, and religious service. The day begins very early, before sunrise, because the first Mass of the day marks the official beginning of everything. Monks and priests rise to the sound of the bells and dress in simple, rough habits that identify them as members of their order. Personal hygiene is basic. They wash their face and hands with cold water. Full baths are rare, reserved for special occasions. Breakfast is minimal. Stale bread, porridge, or a little cheese, accompanied by a very light beer. Here, the goal is not pleasure, but rather compliance with routine and nourishment to face the day. Then begins the mix of prayer, study, and work. Prayer is not only a spiritual ritual, but also a way of structuring time. Between Masses, they study religious texts in Latin, copy manuscripts, teach novices or children from wealthy families, and perform manual labor. Cultivating the garden, caring for animals, repairing buildings, or preparing herbal medicines. Each task is regulated by strict rules of obedience and discipline. From a social standpoint, being a member of the clergy would give you a very privileged position. You would have moral authority over the common people. Peasants and artisans would come to you for confession, advice, or blessings. You would also know information that others did not. Births, marriages, deaths, and even news of nobles and merchants. Some higher-ranking clergy even advised kings, which gave them indirect political influence. Regarding health, you would have limited knowledge. You would use herbs, ointments, and prayers. Epidemics are terrible, and the plague can decimate entire villages. However, your position protects you better than most of the population, because you would have access to safer food and basic care. Family life is different. You have no wife or children. Your family is the other members of the monastery. You share spaces, work as a team, learn and teach, and rely on the community. Leisure time is scarce, but it exists in the form of reading, sacred music, writing manuscripts, or, occasionally, modestly more cheerful religious celebrations. Deciding to become a cleric seems like a good option in this era. In fact, many children of peasants or bourgeoisie enter monasteries as monks or apprentices, because if they are skilled and educated, they can rise to high positions. It is the most open path to social advancement. The bourgeoisie is made up of merchants, bankers, and high-level artisans such as goldsmiths, jewelers, and master builders. Most run businesses, workshops, or commercial fleets. They have large houses in the city and wear expensive fabrics, although the law of luxury sometimes restricts their ostentation so as not to appear noble. If you were a bourgeois in medieval times, your life would revolve around commerce, work, and social reputation. You would wake up at dawn, because the city was already beginning to move. The bell towers were striking the hour, and the markets were opening early. Your hygiene was basic, but more meticulous than that of a peasant. A quick wash of hands and face, combing your hair, and dressing in good quality wool or linen clothing. Your clothing reflects your status, not luxurious like that of the nobility, but finer than that of the common people. Breakfast was simple: bread, some cheese, dried fruit, or porridge. Sometimes a little diluted beer or wine, because water isn't always safe. There's no leisure time, because work starts quickly. A bourgeois day is almost entirely dedicated to work and trade. If you're a merchant, you inspect your goods, negotiate prices, send orders, and review accounts. If you're a craftsman, you run your workshop, teach apprentices, and produce quality goods that are then sold in the city or exported. Bourgeois are organized into guilds, which regulate trades and prices, protect their members, and establish strict rules for apprentices and masters. Guilds also have political power in the city, because many municipal councils are composed of members of the bourgeoisie. The family is central. Children learn the trade from a young age, and sometimes the business is passed down through generations. Women help in the workshop, manage accounts, or sell products at the market. Social life combines work and reputation. It's important to be recognized as honest and capable. Churches, markets, and fairs are visited. Business is done, and family alliances are forged through marriages. Leisure activities exist, but are limited. You can attend religious festivals, fairs, weddings, guild banquets, or cultural activities such as music, street theater, or local tournaments. Safety is relative. The city is walled, but robberies and riots are frequent, so you sometimes hire guards or join urban militias. The common people are mostly workers, peasants, apprentices, and servants. They work long hours, in the fields or in workshops, for low wages or in kind, meaning food or shelter. They pay taxes, tithes to the church, and rents to their lord. They live in humble houses, often shared with farm animals. If you were a peasant, you would have to wake up very early, barely at dawn. There are no alarm clocks. The rooster or the light of day is your cue. Hygiene is minimal, a quick wash of face and hands with cold water, because full baths are rare and soap is scarce and expensive. Your breakfast would be stale bread, some cheese or porridge, and perhaps some light beer, because well water can be contaminated. There are no luxuries, and food is primarily for survival. Your life revolves almost entirely around work. In the fields, you plow, sow, harvest, tend animals, and prepare firewood for the winter. In winter, the work is lighter, repairing tools, maintaining fences, or preparing food for the cold. Or if you're in a small town, you could work as an apprentice craftsman, blacksmith, or baker, learning a trade from childhood. The days are long, from dawn to dusk, with only a break for lunch. There are no vacations, except for some religious holidays or Sundays, which are more for attending Mass than for resting. You live with your family in a small house, sometimes shared with animals. Infant mortality is high, so families often have many children. Everyone works. Children help around the house or in the fields, and the elderly help out according to their abilities. Privacy is almost non-existent. Life is shared. Soups, bread, and vegetables are cooked in a humble home. The family is your main support, and the immediate community also plays an important role. Neighbors help with harvests, celebrations, or emergencies. If you wanted to have a better life than that of a peasant, it would be very difficult, but possible. You only have a few options: prospering in a trade, marrying someone of higher standing, or entering the clergy. Beggars and outcasts are chronically ill people, orphans, or widows without a livelihood. They depend on public and church charity. Some beggars form brotherhoods to help each other. Lepers or people with contagious diseases live isolated in leper colonies outside the walls. Treated with compassion mixed with contempt, they are seen as a reminder of human frailty and, sometimes, as divine punishment. They receive alms on religious holidays, but are also expelled in times of crisis or plague. If you wake up as a beggar, there are no comfortable houses or beds. You sleep wherever you can, under a doorway, in an alley, or in an abandoned stable. The cold and rain are constant enemies, and hygiene is almost non-existent. You can only wash in a river or with water you can find. Your clothes are old, torn, and sometimes patched. Dawn doesn't bring rest, but rather the need to survive, searching for food, water, and a safe place to spend the day. You often rely on the charity of neighbors, the church, or alms in plazas and markets. As an outcast, your day is spent searching for food and protection, collecting scraps in markets, bakeries, or noble benches, begging in churches, plazas, or in front of wealthy homes, avoiding dangers, criminals, animals, city guards, or hostile neighbors. Sometimes you have to form small communities of beggars to protect each other. Food is irregular and not very nutritious. Often just stale bread, leftover soup, or whatever you can scavenge. Health is fragile, and constant exposure to cold, hunger, and disease is dangerous. Becoming a beggar could happen for several reasons. A serious illness or physical disability prevented you from working. Medieval society's view of disability was very harsh. A child with a physical or mental disability was considered a burden, and a divine punishment, or, in some cases, someone who could not be educated or employed. Some were abandoned at birth. Others were given to the church, where they might receive minimal care or basic religious education, but rarely learned a trade. Life for them was extremely difficult. They relied on charity, often ending up as beggars or in religious communities that took them in temporarily. Another way to end up an outcast would be if you were unfortunate enough to lose your land or employment. If you were a peasant, a poor harvest would ruin your family, leaving you without resources. Being widowed or orphaned, with no relatives to support you, many widows fell into poverty, especially if they had no family to support them. They could be forced to work as servants, vendors in markets, or even rely on church charity. The lack of economic and social protection made them very vulnerable to exploitation. Some ended up begging or in hospices, especially if they were elderly, sick, or unable to work. Society viewed these women with compassion, but also with distrust, because extreme poverty was perceived as a social risk. From one day to the next, you could lose the little you had. Poor people were expelled from villages or unjustly accused of minor crimes, or war disasters. Fires, looting, or epidemics left many homeless. Being a beggar in the Middle Ages meant living on the edge, dependent on the charity of others, exposed to cold and disease, and always at risk of violence or expulsion. No one wanted to end up like that, and it was almost always the result of misfortune, poor health, war, or the loss of resources. Society viewed them with a mixture of pity, fear, and contempt, and their chances of rising socially were minimal. It is extremely difficult to escape being a beggar, basically only through a stroke of luck, or by being taken in by a guild or monastery. In general terms, life in medieval times is marked from dawn onward. The church bells mark the beginning of the day. There are no personal clocks, so everyone depends on the bells or the sunlight. As for hygiene, it's very basic. Most wash their faces and hands with cold water. But a full bath is rare, perhaps once a month, or less, depending on the season. Latrines are shared and empty into pits or directly into the street. In larger cities, there are public baths. People pay a small fee to enter. There they can immerse themselves in hot or warm water. Baths are social places. In addition to cleaning, people converse, conduct business, or exchange gossip. However, the church sometimes views public baths with suspicion, especially if they are mixed or involve close contact. Most people don't have bathtubs or access to abundant water. Buckets of hot water, heated in pots over the fire, are poured over the body. Only the nobles and wealthy have special rooms called bathtubs or tubs, filled with hot water and scented with herbs or flowers. But in general, everyday use is a damp cloth to cleanse the face, hands, and neck, and full baths are only occasionally taken. Soap is expensive, so its use is rare. Instead, aromatic herbs, oils, or ashes are used to cleanse the skin. Peasants and common people bathe very sporadically, usually in rivers, streams, or lakes. Nobles usually bathe once a week or every few days, depending on their resources and the season. There are seasons and festivals when bathing is more frequent, such as before weddings, important visits, or religious celebrations. It is thought that the water can transmit diseases if it is stagnant or cold. Some doctors recommend avoiding frequent baths to avoid opening the pores and unbalancing the body's humors. Because of this, many people use clothing perfumes and herbal powders to mask odors instead of actually bathing. On the other hand, breakfast consists of rye or wheat bread, some cheese, oatmeal soup, fermented grains, and very light beer, as it is safer than water. Meat in the morning is a luxury. In the city, there are guilds, associations of artisans in the same trade, such as bakers, blacksmiths, shoemakers, and weavers. These control quality, prices, and the training of apprentices. If you are the son of a shoemaker, you will probably be one too. Social mobility is almost zero. There are also merchants, who bring spices, fabrics, or salt from other cities. Some work for the nobility as administrators or accountants. Apprentices live in their master's home, working all day in exchange for food, shelter, and training in the trade. The church dominates almost everything. It dictates feast days, fasting days, what can be eaten and when. On Sundays, no one works, everyone goes to Massachusetts. Religious holidays are also the few opportunities to celebrate, with music, street theater, or fairs. Art is closely linked to the sacred. Stained glass, sculptures, and illuminated manuscripts. Education, when it exists, is in the hands of monks and clerics and is based on Latin and religious texts. Secular schools are few and expensive. The Church has great power and authority. It defines what is right and sinful, and everyone is obliged to follow its teachings. It controls the rights of birth, marriage, and death, ensuring that every person's life is under its supervision. The fear of hell and heavenly reward drives people to obey its rules, seek regular confession, and receive the sacraments. Monasteries and cathedrals are centers of learning. There, manuscripts were copied, literacy was taught, primarily in Latin, and ancient knowledge was preserved. The Church also controlled the education of nobles and bourgeois, training clerics, teachers, and scribes. Bishops and high-ranking clerics could advise kings and nobles, influencing political and legal decisions. The Church collected tithes, taxes on agricultural production, and other revenues, and held extensive estates. Its authority was greater than even that of some local lords. Excommunicating someone could isolate them socially. The Church cared for the poor and sick through hospices, hospitals, and convents. It provided food, shelter, and basic care to orphans, widows, and the marginalized. During epidemics, monks and priests cared for the sick, prayed, and offered spiritual comfort, although they could not cure many illnesses. They also influenced daily life. Religious festivals marked the calendar, such as Christmas and Easter. Morality and daily conduct were monitored: attendance at Mass, observance of fasts, respect for clergy, and charity toward the poor. The Church also imposed social and spiritual punishments: excommunication, public penance, or humiliation for those who broke the rules. During this period, illnesses were common: colds, flu, coughs, fever, diarrhea, infections, and the plague. Malnutrition and poor hygiene weakened the body, facilitating infections. Wounds, even small ones, could easily become infected and cause death because antibiotics were unavailable. Epidemics were common, mortality was very high, and cities were filled with fear when outbreaks occurred. There was no clear understanding of bacteria or viruses. Illness was believed to be caused by bad air, imbalanced moods, or divine punishment. Medicine is based on the theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Physicians try to balance the humors through bloodletting, purges, diets, herbs, and potions to treat illnesses. Nurses and healers used home remedies, herbal infusions, ointments, honey, and hot baths. Science was limited. Prayers and religious rituals were often used, as illnesses were believed to be divine punishment. The reaction to a seriously ill person was usually isolation, fear, and prayer, because people feared contagion and isolated the sick. Neighborhoods or towns were often closed to avoid epidemics, and in large cities, rudimentary quarantines were implemented. Death was very common. Mourning and funeral rites were part of daily life. Doctors existed, but they were few, expensive, and trained more in theory than practice. Cures could include bloodletting, herbs, prayers, or amulets. The poor turned to healers, midwives, or the local apothecary. Epidemics like the Black Death caused panic, mass exodus, and sometimes persecution of minorities accused of bringing the disease. Children, the elderly, and the poor are the most vulnerable. Families lose several members in a short period of time, leading to orphan children and impoverished widows becoming beggars. Doctors and clergymen are respected figures, but also feared due to their limited skills and the superstition surrounding illness. Families are often large, but childbirth is very dangerous. There is no advanced medicine or safe cesarean sections. If the mother dies, the newborns are left in the care of the father, grandparents, or other relatives. If no one is able to care for them, the babies may be abandoned, given to hospices, or, in desperate cases, left to fend for themselves. Infant mortality is brutal. Even in the hands of family members, many babies died in their first year of life, and without a mother, the chances of survival are even slimmer. But in general, many people do not reach adulthood. Those who survive childhood can live several more decades, especially if they have resources and social standing. Mortality is strongly influenced by status, health, nutrition, and luck in the face of illness and conflict. Everyone shares small spaces, 1 or 2 rooms for sleeping, cooking, and working. The warmth of the home comes from the fire in the center of the room. Private life is almost non-existent. Children work from a young age, and the elderly, if they survive, help around the house or depend on their children. Women, in addition to taking care of the house, help in the family business or work in markets. Widows may inherit their husband's workshop. At dusk, artificial light is a luxury. Candles and oil are expensive. When it gets dark, the gate in the wall is closed. No one enters or leaves. Families gather for dinner, soup, bread, some legumes, or fish. Afterwards, stories are told, prayers are said, and early sleep is taken to take advantage of the light of the next day.